Welcome to Indie Music Cast, episode 321, The Other Side of Mastering. Indie Music Podcast now has a Patreon at patreon.com/indie_musiccast. And we invite you to become a member for exclusive benefits. For next to nothing per month, you can get members-only podcast video, early access to upcoming episodes, merch, and more. This morning, Matt and I get together for coffee and talk about the other side of the mastering process that many are not familiar with or have never considered as part of the mastering process. Enjoy the show. Hey.
Morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going all right. How are you doing?
Excellent. It's a beautiful sunny morning this morning. For those
here too,
and in our sort of, I guess, southeastern hemisphere, the like Jupiter and Venus and what else? Maybe Saturn. I think we're above the horizon this morning.
Oh, cool.
Which is, I was up just a little bit before dark. You could see them just above the horizon. It was cool.
Nice. I can't really see my horizon. There's too many trees and houses.
Yeah. Just making sure everything's working here. I think
yeah, it sounds all right. Looks like you moved stuff around again?
No, just the camera.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, this way I can kind of glance over. I had you over here, but I had it over here set up for a meeting yesterday. And then, yeah, anyway, this is sort of my podcast position.
Yeah.
Because then I can look at the computer a little bit easier when I need to. You know?
Oh, okay. Fair enough. So I switched out my mic today. I'm using my Behringer B2 Pro condenser mic. That was the first condenser mic that I bought, and I recorded on most of my albums on that.
It's a nice looking microphone.
It's underrated. It's a solid mic. I got it on eBay many years ago. It's not a flat response. It has a slight bump at 12K, which helps voices cut through a mix, but it might be a little bright for something just spoken word like a podcast, but it's good for recording vocals in a mix.
I think it sounds fantastic right now over Zoom audio. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Hopefully your local recording will sound as good. I think it sounds.
Yeah,
really
I hope
good.
so too. It's definitely a little. I mean, it's definitely a little brighter than the Samson that I've been using all week. Yeah,
but it's not over the top, and there's plenty of low in there. It sounds like really well balanced. I would if it sounds like this in your recording, I bet you don't even have to EQ it. I mean, seriously, it's really good.
That was what I liked about it when I was recording with it for my rock music.
Yeah. No, cool. Excellent. I like it. That'd be one to get in the mic locker just for just to have it, because it sounds like a great mic.
Yeah. I think it's relatively inexpensive. I think it's still available, but it's kind of an overlooked but pretty solid condenser mic. It's gold flecked. I don't know if that makes any difference, but that's one of their selling points. It's kind of plug and play. It's got a pad. It can do omni, figure eight, or cardioid. It's got a 10 dB pad if you want to use it on the kick drum, and it's got a low shelf that falls off at 6 dB at 150 if you want to use it, but I turned that off for now because I think it sounds better with spoken word.
Yeah, nice, man. I'm surprised you haven't used it before on the podcast.
I forgot that I had it.
Oh, really? For the man who has too many microphones that he forgets that he has a particular microphone.
Well, I forgot that I had it because I had this one in the house with my other interface in the event that there was some reason that I couldn't record out here. And
so if you've got a lot of guitars, do you forget that you have a particular guitar?
No comment. What about you? Any new gear this week? Anything cool going on in your?
No, just cables.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Hooking
really
tape drive.
Expensive cables.
Did you? It sounded like you paid more for cables than you did for your tape machine.
Well, it was close, but I worked with my sales engineer and I got a better price. But yeah, just because I was like, really? Come on.
Yeah, that's one of those hidden costs. You spec out stuff, you spec out gear, you spec out all the obvious things, but
Yeah.
when you're talking about high quality cables, throw that into the hidden cost category. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I pay how much for good cables?
And I got to really care about it, and
Yeah.
because anything, the weakest link in your signal chain is your lowest point,
Oh, yeah.
and and inferior cables. I know there's I don't want to open up a whole can of worms here, but I do think that cables matter, and
They do.
and I think that there's negligible differences for when you get to a certain quality of cable and above, and then it's a matter of what are you really going for. I think if you had like $100 cable versus $1,000 cable, the odds of really hearing a difference there are probably very, very it's the minutia stuff there,
right.
and I totally respect for the audiophile, and I kind of am a semi audiophile, that they care about that kind of thing, and if you've got the money to go for that, for what you're trying to achieve with your audio system, then definitely go for it, because there is that little bit of difference. And when you're trying to tweak out every last little bit, then that's where that can be made up, but I think there's a big difference between that $100 cable and that $9 cable.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I think that that's really important. And so make good choices there depending on what you're doing. The $9 cable may be really good for live, and it's pretty much disposable because the cables get abused, and when you're playing out live and everything like that. And so maybe that makes more sense for that kind of thing. It doesn't,
right.
But for recording, you need to, and mixing, mastering, if you're using cables, as I do, for routing for outboard and things like that, and obviously out to your monitors and things. And I think that does matter. So
yeah, I didn't believe that for a while when I was first starting out, but it did take me learning it the hard way, of course, that even with guitar cables, guitar leads, the cheap ones they just don't have the proper wiring, the shielding, and they introduce noise into your signal chain.
Yeah, and it's measurable, and I've experienced that. You remember that a few months ago, where I had some that's one of the things that I ordered was patch cables to replace, because I couldn't use the patch cables that I had because they were introducing noise, and so I've been using good but longer cables. And another thing that I believe is that you should keep your cable links to as minimum as possible. That's why I'm, like in my rack, I'm not using, 10 or 15 foot cables. I'm using, which I actually have right now, waiting on the patch cables, so that I can reduce the length of the cables that I'm using, so.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Now, having worked in IT for so long, I remember when, there was Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, Cat 6, Cat E, and those were all different specifications of Ethernet cables.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with not just the quality of the wires and the shielding, but like how many twists of the wires per inch, which basically kind of like a humbucker does, basically countered all of the what's called crosstalk between the wires, so that it canceled out and the signal was cleaner.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a specification, because I used to actually make my own cables for my own Ethernet cables. And I remember there was a spec. It would not be Cat 5 if it wasn't a certain length, because there wasn't enough distance between the ends of the cable for enough twist to be countering the crosstalk. Is that true, you think, of audio cables as well?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't have the shortest cable I use is 1.5 feet. I used all my entire signal chain is balanced, so I've got all shielded cables throughout the entire studio, except for I'm running balanced out. I've got a balanced amplifier, and so I've got balanced signal all the way to the amplifier. So it's just from the amplifier to the speakers where we're no longer shielded, and there's some different usable. I mean, obviously, I think especially with speaker cable and impedance and capacitance and stuff like that, that you want to have the right length of cable and not too much more excess to get to your speakers. And that's because of potential for RF interference and things like that,
right.
and stuff. Some people, and I'm not sure the validity of this, but believe that it's not good to have your cables on the ground.
I've
And
heard that too.
they actually make little risers so you can kind of bridge them up off the ground. And mine are on the ground.
True? Do you think that's true?
Maybe, I don't know.
What would be what's the rationale for saying that, I wonder?
I don't know, some kind of weird grounding or something like that. I think it depends maybe on the material that the speakers are laying on. Maybe if they're laying on carpet, there's potential for static electricity or something like that. I don't know.
Maybe it's practical. Maybe it's just that if it's on the ground, it's more likely to get stepped on and have the shielding.
Yeah,
broken.
I mean, if you've got $1,000 speaker cable, I ain't letting that thing touch the ground. So, and my speaker cables, I actually enclosed them. I've got really good speaker cable, and I made them up myself. I have Canary, which I'm a big fan of, and I have a lot of Canary cable in my studio. Thank you, Canary. You're not sponsored, but you're great. And then I also enclosed everything in TechFlex, which is the kind of nylon material that kind of works like the Chinese finger lock thing. And so I've got that, and I've got it pulled with shrink wrap on the ends and stuff. And that's an abrasive barrier to keep the cable from getting chafed or whatever, because it does lay on the floor. So and then I was also able, I do it because I can easily identify my cables. All my signal cable going out for monitoring is red, so I can quickly find cables by color. My data cables are blue. Anyway, I kind of go with that, so it makes it, because you end up with a lot of cable. I don't do that in my rack because it's just too expensive, and once it's wired up.
I'm a big fan of color coding, but otherwise you're going to have to make little labels, and I hate making flags.
Since I made up all my cables to date so far, I use shrink tubing, and I just do once like the left side, I put a white piece of shrink. So I know from one end or the other, which is left, which is right, which is, that's otherwise you got to start at one end and then trace your and there's a lot of cables, and it doesn't take a lot of equipment to develop a lot of cables, because you're basically talking about a power wire and 4 cables for every analog device. So that's left and right ends and left and right outs. Okay. And in some cases you've got more. You've got for instance, your world clock cables, your SPDIF cables, your light pipe cables. So I've got a 25 pin. What's it called?
DB25.
DB25 cable in here. That goes out. So that's 8 channels of microphone mic pre's. That come into my just the outputs that come into my patch bay, so I can patch any channel being recorded if I wanted up to 8 channels. Don't use it. I only use a couple, but it's nice to have those. I have used more than 2 on occasion, and I've had people in here for special recording sessions or something like that, but I don't really need that anymore. But I did I kept my claret when I sold off my other recording and mixing stuff, because I thought that was useful. So and I do continue to using it for the podcast right now. So
one thing I've done in the past is just go to the hardware store and got like a multi-pack of multicolored electrical tape. And because the electrical tape comes in red, blue, green, white, and all this stuff. And I just take a short length of electrical tape and put the same color at the end of each thing. So this one has white ends and this one has red ends. And you can just tell at a glance, oh, that power cord goes to my computer and that power cord goes to my speakers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for any cable that's already made up, you don't want to have to desolder it, so you can slide some shrink tube on and then solder it back together again, so having some tape like that.
That's what I was going to ask. Does shrink tube work if you take a tube and you cut it then wrap it around, can you still shrink it, or does it not work?
There's some that has an adhesive on the inside of it that might work for that, but it might be compromised. You'd be better off, I think, using tape for it. But,
Yeah, I think so too.
but if you're making up your own cables and you have the opportunity to throw a little sliver of shrink tubing on there and go ahead and market it, that's what I do. And and I don't do all, I mean, I don't want to, I don't do the right channels. I just do the left channels. And I know by location in the patch bay, which, they're in pairs. So I know that the one right next to it is the same device, so every two, so it's not hard to find. I just need to know, make sure that I got the left channel, left cable channel in the left channel. And then if I'm looking for that one cable, then I can quickly find it because I know what channels it's in the patch bay. And then if I'm looking for a left one, I know that it's going to have a white on it. So it's easy to find. I don't have to have every one a different color. It doesn't matter. It's easy enough to find that. If I just have the one.
Distinguish them.
Yeah. Because the back side of my patch bay's all numbered as well. So I can see it.
Right.
But yeah,
that is not what we were going to talk about today.
no, but it's interesting.
It is interesting.
And I think cables are well, I don't really think of them as the overlooked thing because I'm always faced with the expense of them.
Sure.
So I'm well aware every time I buy a piece of equipment. Yeah, I wish it wouldn't be the way, but okay, well that means I get, it's definitely nice to have some extra cable around. I've used it all up now. I had bought some bulk cable, and I had some inventory of quarter-inch TRSs, and I use quarter-inch TRS and male and female XLR. So I just bought some bulk of those things, and I had them around. I've used them all up now, but it's a nice way to go because then you got the stuff, and you don't have to wait days for an order. Where I'm at, nobody has the stuff that I'd like to use. It's all the cheaper things. I won't name any brand names on that, but and I just don't care for that stuff. It's more geared towards consumer level stuff, and or live, and just it's designed to be affordable, and because you're going to beat it up and
semi disposable in a sense.
Really, yeah.
I'm picturing all of my outings and with like student bands, and how that stuff would get, just all of that equipment would get abused. And so you're talking about, you got just mostly SM58s because, you can run over those with a car and they'll be fine.
Yeah. And you think about
the
other
cables things, get so abused and lost, and,
outdoor gigs, and it starts raining and,
sure.
Or it's been, you got cables running over gravel and people walking over the top of them, so.
And then at the end of the night, everybody's packing up and wants to go home, and, you don't have, half of it's rented anyway. So they're just throwing all the cables into milk crates and carrying them off. You've been there. You know what I'm talking about.
I don't do that. I'm the guy.
You don't do that.
You sons of, because I'm the one rolling them all.
They're always like, we'll roll them up when we get back to the school.
Roll them up on site.
Yes.
But so I did want to talk about some other stuff though, but and what I kind of had come up with that I thought would be of interest is everybody's familiar with, for the most part, what mastering engineers do on the front side, and which is work with audio processing and balancing EQ and compression, and in the context of the whole song, of the whole album, and we've talked about that, versus a mix engineer being concerned more with the internal balance of specific tracks or track groupings and things like that, but what we don't often talk about is the other side of mastering, which is preparing all of the finished tracks for distribution. And which is these tasks are well within, they are the part of the role of mastering engineer. And and if I haven't said it before, the audio processing side is maybe makes up 50% of the actual workload of a mastering engineer, maybe a little less than 50%, because there's so much that goes on the back end. And and I think most engineers that provide mastering services are pretty well familiar with like preparing material for streaming services.
Mm-hmm. That'd be me.
And yeah, and maybe maybe you could take that and tell us about your process for not working with the audio files and audio processing, but working with the audio files in preparation and packaging, basically.
Well, the streaming services, I mean, the way it's worked with all of the musicians that I've worked with, there's not much to do beyond, once you're done with the audio processing and you've made sure that and we've talked about the audio processing, then you make sure that all the songs, sound like they hang together, if it's an EP or an album, and you do your tops and tails, you got the start times and end times, so that they all sound good when you play them in series. It's really just exporting them as WAV files, and those files then go to the distributor like CD Baby or DistroKid or what have you. And then from there, that distributor handles the creation of MP3s. They handle the creation of CDs, if that's what people want to do. So there isn't a whole back end. They provide the UPC code. You have to pay for that. They'll provide the ISRC codes if they don't have them. I've purchased a block of ISRC codes, so I have those if people need them. But frequently the distributor will give those as part of the purchase price. So a lot of that stuff is handled by the distributors such as CD Baby, because a lot of the musicians that I'm dealing with, that's the route that they're going. So I'm kind of handing them the WAV files, and that stuff is handled by the machine that's set up, the processing that's set up to make things easier for musicians through the distributors to do all those different things. But you do it a little more old school. You do all that yourself and create that CD master file.
Oh yeah. So like for streaming, to kind of add on to what you do, I'm a registered ISRC manager with the U.S. ISRC agency. So I don't actually purchase a block of ISRCs. I generate ISRCs on demand.
Well.
And
did not know that.
and then those get assigned to the music. I have to maintain a database of assignments, and that's mainly to ensure uniqueness of the ISRCs and that no duplicates are created.
Right.
Because the actual generation part is a manual process, so I maintain the database. So what's the next one, and create them sequentially. But so I need to know what I've created, and then those get assigned, and then the user can, or the artist can then has that audio embedded, the ISRC embedded in the audio as part of their metadata package.
Oh, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everybody knows what an ISRC code is. It's a unique identifier for a song that is used by any streaming service, any sync licensing service, any your PRO, anybody that needs to identify your song as it's out there in the world so that they can trace royalties back to you.
Yeah.
It's super, super important to have those codes. And keep them the same anytime you change distributors, anytime you distribute your song. You should keep your own list of the ISRC codes for your own songs in your own spreadsheet and have them on demand for that reason. Otherwise, you're never going to get paid any royalties on that song.
Yeah. And I think maybe an easy way to think about it, because I think maybe more people are familiar with ISBN codes for books. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. It's the same thing. All right, and it's how authors of books get royalties and get paid for sales of their books by other outlets. So every time Amazon sells a book, it's got an ISBN number, and the author gets whatever is due to him and royalties. It's the same way with music with the Isrc code, and the obviously the streaming services do that. You really need to be connected in addition to what the streaming services do for you, and like CD Baby and DistroKid, but also with the PRO. Right. And with like ASCAP or BMI or something like that, and those are kind of specific for performance royalties, right? And then there's also services that handle more types of if it's used in sync, or other broadcast, radio broadcast, and things like that. So really
Sound Exchange is the
yeah. So and I work with Sound Exchange, and that's what they handle those. So I always recommend that, and you can have an ASCAP account as well as a Sound Exchange account because they don't overlap. And so the ISRCs, with the services that you're using, and then your ASCAP or BMI and then a Sound Exchange account cover you. Artists usually handle their own ASCAP accounts and things like that, but I'm set up to actually be a managing representative of artists on Sound Exchange. So I can actually take your album and get it registered and enter in all the information and set it up for you, so that you then get the royalties paid out. I don't take any royalties or anything like that. I just represent you in the to the capacity of making sure it's properly registered, and that's just an upfront fee as part of my mastering stuff, and after that it's paid for. Nothing else comes out. And then Apple Digital Masters is another thing, which is an option in most distribution platforms. I know definitely most of the artists that I work with use I've only just said it like 5 times. More coffee.
Sound Exchange, ASCAP.
No, not CD Baby. DistroKid, and DistroKid allows you to actually select as part of your submission to have it sent in for certification as an Apple approved digital master. But you have to have an Apple approved digital mastering house in order to get that, which I am.
Got it.
And so you have to go through a certification process for that. But and that's good because one, that whole process is about not having any digital clipping. Okay, I mean, really, that's the gist of it, is to have the highest quality files with no clipping that you can create, digitally. And the benefit of that for the artists is that they receive higher preference in iTunes searches. And and so music that is certified as Apple Digital Masters will actually come up more often in searches, given what you're searching for. So you have a higher probability of getting in front of listeners that way. So it's a nice benefit. And then the same process ensures that you're going to meet requirements for Tidal, digital masters, and things like that too. Right. So, so any of the for the high quality streaming stuff, that has more to do with the resolution, and the higher, so for the Tidal masters, the higher the resolution of your audio files, the better. So maybe like 98 and stuff like that is a good point to go for. I just always stress there, if you wanted to go for, I'm sorry, 96. If you wanted to go for 96, then you should be recording at 96 at the very beginning and mixing at 96, and a lot of people don't do that because to record at that means that you're losing half your channels because of the way that digital recording works, so
Right. And the files are so,
but if you're able to do it, then that sets you up for higher resolution files all the way through to distribution, which is really a good thing to do. But yeah, so that kind of encompasses the back end of wow, we have gone through time like
I know. I was going to say, well, we spent a good 15 minutes on cables.
Yeah. Okay. Man, sometimes these topics just get away. I know I talk too much, man. I had so much more to talk about.
Well, just run through it quickly. Just checklist that. Just
all right. So I wanted to introduce you to DDPs, okay, which is a disk description protocol. I think that's correct.
Yep.
And a DDP is basically an audio image that is burned onto disk. Okay, so as opposed to like what you might do at home and you're burning MP3s and ripping MP3s to disk, this is actually taking the audio file and creating an image of that is the DDP, and it's set up in that certain format to then be encoded onto and burned onto disk. There's some nuances about it, and I just wanted to quickly describe how this is set up in the way that I do it. There is, I think it's 2,357 bytes per sector in CD audio file, and there's 75 sectors per second that are played. Okay, so it's important when you are setting up your audio master for DDP that you change the resolution in your DAW to be 75 sectors per second. And in my DAW, that happens to be a video setting because we're kind of talking about frames. Okay.
Oh, right.
So sectors and frames are kind of synonymous. So you actually use a video setting to change the frames and set up the grid then accordingly, so that the grid represents how the CD sees it, and then you can look at your audio and maybe more easily detect or determine mistakes that you're making in your layout. But the way that you set up a DDP is with markers, and you'll have a first marker at the 0 position, which is the only thing that it contains is an exclamation point, and that's actually an indicator to the CD player that this is the beginning of the CD, and this is where you start, and so that's the index 0. It's a 0 index based read, and then you have to have 2 seconds of nothing, no audio, and you place another marker. And the reason you have to have 2 seconds is because you have to give CD players time to actually read all the information on the CD, and so you always have 2 seconds of empty space till your first marker. Your first marker represents your first track, and then for every track that you have in the CD album, it will start at the beginning of the track with a marker, and that is the album metadata, or that's the track metadata. And then at the very end of the last song on the album, you have one more marker, which represents the album metadata, and so that's the title of the album, and ISRC and everything else that goes in there. That goes at the end. So that's the CD player actually will read the very last marker as that album information. And there's a lot more to go into. DDP is not open sourced. It's not, you can't go readily read the spec on DDP, so it's like owned and copyrighted, but you can create DDPs. There's software out there to create them, and I would imagine that those software providers, are are buying licenses from the copyright holder of DDP, and in order to be able to use those. And I just so happened in my DAW happens to support Ddp rendering, so I can render. I just set that up as I just explained, and then render as usual. But instead of choosing a waveform, I choose a DDP, and it'll create the DDP for me.
So you're talking like a 700 megabyte file, right?
Well,
it's like a disk image. Like
no more than 75 actually. So, or I'm sorry, so no more than 75 minutes. I don't really care.
Oh, I see.
I just want to. I think more of it in minutes, but yeah. So you would definitely. But the DDP audio is nowhere near the size of, because it's an image of like wave audio or whatever. Right. And also, it's important to note that for CD audio, that's got to be set up at 44.1,
right,
by 16-bit. Okay, and because that's
Redbook standard.
Yeah, Redbook standard. To render the file. Once you have the DDP image, then you can actually burn the DDP onto disk. And actually, the DDP is my deliverable, and I send that out to the CD plant, where it's either duplicated or replicated, and they just take the DDP image and then apply it to each one of the CDs.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference between duplication and replication that I wanted to cover. And duplication is like what you and I and everybody else do on their home computers when we rip discs and we actually burn a copy of an audio file onto another disc. Okay, and what they do in duplication is they have like a master disk, and then they'll do maybe 10 or 100 disk copies being burned at the same time. Okay. Replication is different, and replication is a little bit more expensive, and replication is a higher quality process where they actually create a glass master of the CD image. And then it goes through, it's actually stamping process. They stamp the glass master into the individual discs, and then they get like a lacquer coat and the printing and everything like that. So it's not actually a burning process, it's a stamping process and replication.
I've heard about that, but I've never heard it described.
Yeah. Some other, I'm sorry, I'm moving quickly here. But some other
2 minutes left.
notable things are PQ sheets, and you create PQ sheets from once you've done your DDP. And the PQ sheet is basically the entire information sheet of all the metadata, album information, track information, everything that you've included, all the track information, including like the length of the track and all that is in the PQ sheet, and it gives you a sheet to review to make sure that everything is correct. So I always provide a PQ sheet for review to my clients as basically like a proof document, and to catch any mistakes that might have been made along the way before we actually go to duplication or replication. After that, we talked about Isrc already, and metadata and embedding, which is a process during the rendering cycle. And I don't have time to get into vinyl or tape, but
we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time. But anyway, that's like the backside of mastering that no one ever really discusses much. It's actually hard to find information out on the web about it too, but there's lots of things that go on in mastering that people really don't have an idea of what types of
and that's a
mastering.
lot of stuff specifically geared toward manufacturing physical CDs. So I don't know how are people still using CDs? I know they are, but I don't know that everybody is. But yeah, that's all a lot of old school stuff that it's important to kind of keep around and keep that knowledge going. Well,
that for posterity, for nostalgia, and and things like tapes. There's a resurgence of cassette tapes now.
Cassette tapes are big,
which is why I've geared up, and we talked about last time. I've geared up for cassette tape mastering now, and it's been so fun, man. But
I want to hear more about that. Let's
really
talk about vinyl and tape and stuff next time.
Yeah. So anyway, there you have it.
In the meantime, there you have it in a nutshell. Woo! Thanks everybody for listening. That was a bit of a whirlwind. We appreciate you all. Take a breath, Doug. Take a breath.
Peace, everybody. Have a great week.
Talk to you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Too funny. I didn't know you could talk that fast, man.